Continue our question and answer today. And as I said before, these are challenging questions. I think somebody was just trying to stump me, but we'll see. I'll let y'all grade that. Y'all got your sharp pencils and ready to put a big F or whatever. So we'll go with that. You know, creation and God always stirs up a lot of questions. And that's what the questions are all going to be about this morning. So let's just go ahead and get started, because we're actually going to cover 5 questions this morning. Some of them will take a little longer than others. So here we go. The first question: who created God? Who created God? Well, the quick answer is no one created God. But let's begin in the beginning. In the beginning, God created. Right? Let's just stop there. We don't need any more than that right now. In the beginning, God created. See, everything has an origin. And that origin, or that source, is God. There has to be a source, and that is God. He was there at the beginning of all things. But God was not made by some other being. In fact, in the Colossian letter, Paul said in Colossians 1:17, He is before all things. Not after, not a product of something else. He is before all things, and in Him all things consist. In other words, in Him, He holds everything together. Okay? So everything that we can see and everything that we can't see comes from God. He's always existed. He will exist forever. He is the source. Now, let me put that another way that might help us understand that. So we ask the question, well, if God created us, who created God? Well, think about this. If someone created God, then you would need a bigger God, right? I mean, that just makes sense. But now you have a problem. Who created the bigger God? And if you have a bigger God that created God, then you would need a bigger God. So who created the bigger God that created the bigger God that created God? We're getting there. Because that's exactly right. Because if you have that, now you need a bigger God that created the bigger God that created the bigger God that created God. And so the only thing that really makes sense, and Forrest just said it, is let's just start with the biggest God. Because it had to start somewhere. Because, see, we could do that on and on and on until you you finally get to a source. We were already at the source. So we just start with the biggest God. You know the one. In the beginning, God. He is infinite. He's eternal. He's always existed. He had no beginning. Now, that's easy to say, that He's eternal, that He had no beginning, and things like that. That's kind of easy to say, but it's difficult, impossible really for us to fully understand that, because we are created beings. We had a beginning, right? The universe that we live in, it was a created universe. It had a beginning. So we think of everything as having a beginning because that's what we know. That's what we have experienced. That's what we can see. That's why it takes this thing called faith. That's why it takes faith to understand who God is, because quite frankly, we can't really scientifically prove God's existence, because He is beyond science as we know it. God knows. He's revealed Himself to us through His creation. Look at this verse. We looked at it a week or so ago. Psalm 19, beginning in verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of His hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech, they use no words, no sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. And then keep that one in mind and look at this one in Romans chapter 1 and verse 20. Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power, His divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. Now, let me ask you, according to these verses that we just read, how do we know that God even exists? By what He made. This says it's clearly seen. It's not hidden. The things that He has made that we read about in Psalm 19 and in this verse, it's clearly seen. So we know there's a God because we have faith, but it's not an empty faith. It's a faith in what has been clearly seen. So who created God? God was not created. He just is. As He repeatedly said in the passage, I am. Make sense? Let's go to the next question. I'm getting this, so we're going to leave while we can. All right, the next question. I can't even read that. What was before Earth's creation? Okay, so God created the heavens and the earth. What was before that? That's a good question. And the quick answer, I guess, would be there was only God in heaven. We're going to have to go back to the beginning again. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God. Okay? So what else was there? There was God. In the beginning, God. And again, we'll have to look at that other passage that we looked at a minute ago in Colossians 1:17. He is what? Before all things. That means there was nothing before Him, right? Okay? So, and in Him all things consist. In other words, again, He holds everything together. Now, let's go a little bit further in Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the earth was without form and void, or empty, that means. And darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Now, I want you to notice here in verse 2, it says that when He created the heavens. Now, let's understand something. Let's make sure we understand. When He says He created the heavens and the earth, He's not talking about the heaven where He lives. He's talking about when we look up into the heavens. He's talking about the sky. He's talking about the space, the galaxies, the stars, the moons, the planets. Those are the heavens that this is talking about. Not the heaven He lives in. He's already there. Okay? So in verse 2, it says that when He first created the heavens, the sky and space, and the earth, it was formless and void, and darkness was on the face of the surface of the deep. So, there was a formless emptiness in complete darkness. But no, wait a minute. He created that too. He also created that. So it wasn't that before His creation, this is what it was. He created this because He said He created the heavens and the earth, and there it was formless and void and in darkness. So that was after He said, let it be there. Right? Now, we can also go to Job to find out just a little bit more about the creation and what was going on. God's talking to Job here in Job 38, verse 4, and also verse 6 and 7. And He's really kind of fussing at Job a little bit for questioning him. And He says, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and the sons of God shouted for joy? Now, I want you to look at this passage. According to this passage, when God created the earth, what was happening in heaven? There was shouting and singing, wasn't there? Okay, so according to this verse, when he created the earth, when he made its foundation and hung the earth and all the things that he said that he did, in other words, at this point, God is not completely alone. He is in heaven. He had already created the angels. Okay? So there's God and the angels, and when he created the earth, they thought it was incredible. And so they were shouting for joy and singing and things like that. And so he was in heaven with the angels. But what we need to understand when we read the account in the Bible is that since the Bible is concerned with the human history, we have the beginning of our creation, the creation of our world, but we don't really have a lot of information on the timing and what went on in heaven in creating that. Because what he's giving us is what we need to know for our world. Does that make sense? So God gave a lot of information about creation of the earth and the universe, but not much about what went on in heaven. Okay? Let's go to the third question. This was not answerable, and yet it is. This is the one I think they thought they stumped me on. Were there other tries or other attempts that God did previously to create earth? Okay? That's actually a very good question. Very simply, the answer is no. But let me explain why I say that. That's not just because my opinion is no. Let's talk about that a little further. I want you to think about it. If there were multiple previous attempts by God to create the earth or the universe, it would mean that God had failed in his earlier attempts, right? If he made earlier attempts and they didn't work out and he had to just trash them, throw them in the garbage can, assuming he had created a garbage can by then, that would mean that he had failed in his attempts. Now, I don't know everything there is to know about God, but what I do know with certainty is God does not fail. Okay? You say, well, how can you be so certain that God doesn't fail? Well, there's a little verse, or a little passage in Deuteronomy, chapter 32 and verse 4 that I came across in some Bible reading the other day. And it says, he is the rock. His work is what? Perfect. His work is perfect. In other words, he doesn't have bad work or failures before he finally gets it right. He gets it right the first time because when he does work, it is perfect. So I'm quite confident God does not fail. So I'm quite confident there were no other attempts to create earth. He only needed one try to get it right. Okay? Let's go to the fourth question. Man, these guys are wearing me out. All right, let's go to the fourth question. I hope these are making sense. I'm getting a decent grade so far. What was the first animal created? Anybody know? What was the first animal created? Well, in order to find out, let's look at creation. Y'all help me out. What was created on the first day? Light. What about the second day? The firmament. That just simply means the sky, the atmosphere, the air that we breathe, things like that. Okay? What about the third day? Dry land and plants. The dry land was separated to create the seas. Actually, the water was already there. And created separate seas and dry land and plants. What about the fourth day? the sun, the moon, and the star in order to not. He had already created light. These were natural ways to continue that light. A light in the day and the light at night. Let me ask you something. He's been at this for 4 days. Are there any animals yet? No animals yet. Okay? We have to take these in order, right? In order to get the first animal. Okay. So let's take day 5. Let's look at some detail on day 5. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the water abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Now, let's take this a little bit further and look at this. So according to Moses, who wrote the book of Genesis by the inspiration of God, it seems that God created the great sea creatures first, right? That's what we just read. Okay, so he created the great sea creatures first and everything that moves, and along with all the fish and everything in the sea. Birds were after that. Well, now that would include fish and mammals that live in the sea. Now, I don't know about you. I don't think of fish as an animal. I just don't. I think of fish as just a tasty dinner. Okay? But mammals are animals. Would you agree with that? I looked up the definition just to be sure and that I wasn't just going crazy, and it said that a mammal is an animal. Can live above, or, on the dry land or in the water, depending on the particular one. So it says that he created first the great sea creatures. That would include the fish. I just discount that because they're not really animals. They're good, but they're not animals. And mammals that live in the sea. Well, that would include things like whales, manatees, which are also called sea cows, dolphins, porpoises, seals, sea lions. What else we got? Walruses, sea otters. So this, to name a few, would be the mammals. Now, these are animals that live in the sea, right? Okay. Now, which one of these did he create first? Dolphins. Okay. It would have been created at the same time. That is right. Because when he said that when it says so he created the great sea creatures and all that swim in the sea, that means boom, they were there. When he says it, it is. And so likely all of these were created, along with others, were created at the exact same time, followed by later that day, apparently, the winged birds in the sky. So I know when we're asking the question, what animal was first, we probably are thinking land animals, but that's not accurate because these are the animals that were created first. Land animals, by the way, were created next. They were created on the next day, the 6th day, along with man. And so there's the answer. Now you have not only an answer about which animal was first, you have a list of them. And they were all created first. Okay. There's 4 down. We have one more. This one could be a little more complex. So you might want to pay close attention to this one. Actually, I hope you were paying close attention to all of them. So let me get a sip of water here. My throat's bothering me. Fifth question is, what do other religions believe about God? That's actually a very good question. Actually, all of them have been very good questions, and I really was impressed with the quality of these questions, the thoughtfulness of these questions. Okay, so let's deal with this one, last one. What do other religions believe about God? See, the reality is that most people believe in a God. Would you agree? I mean, most people believe that there's something greater than they are, greater than themselves, but they don't all have the same idea of who God is or how to relate to God. And so I'm going to go at it this way. There's 4 different categories, technically a little more than 4, but there's different categories of what's called theism. Theism is simply a word that defined means the belief in God or gods. Okay? So we're going to look at a list of theisms, and then we're going to put different religions in those so that we can see how this works. All right? So the first one is monotheism. Mono means one. So this is a belief in one God. So monotheism is a belief in one God. And the largest religions that teach this would be Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Islam, they believe in one God. Does anybody know his name? Allah. Okay. Judaism believes in one God. His name is Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament. Christianity, which we believe, because we are Christians, in Christianity, we believe that the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, and the God of the New Testament are one and the same. They're the same God. His name is Yahweh, also called Jehovah. Okay? Now, that's one way to believe that religions believe in God. Now, another way, this is monotheism, meaning one. There's also polytheism, poly meaning many. So it's a belief in many gods. And I'm not going to go into detail about these religions, not that I could if I wanted to right now. But Hinduism would be a good example of ones that believe in many gods. Okay? Now, this next one is a variation of polytheism, and it's henotheism. Where polytheism means, poly means many, heno means one at a time. Okay, so it's a belief in many gods, but the worship of only one God, or at least one at a time. Examples with that would be the old Greco-Roman world, ancient Hellenism, where they would worship many gods like Zeus and Mercury and different, some of the Greek mythical gods, okay, that we study in Greek mythology. Which was a long time ago, so I don't remember a lot of them. So that would be an example of henotheism. Also Mormonism. They believe in a lot of gods. They'll only worship one, but they believe in a lot of gods. And so, again, I'm not going into detail of these. The fourth one, which is sort of split, is pantheism. The word pan meaning all. And this teaches that all things comprise and make up God. All the things in the world comprise and make up God. Okay? Now, very similar to that is panentheism. Panen meaning all in, which teaches that God is within all things. So an easy way to describe this would be, it's similar to nature worship. Okay? We worship nature. People say, instead of worshiping the Creator, many people worship the creation. And so in nature worship, the tree is a god. The dog is a god. The river is a god. I'm a god. We're all gods. Everything in nature is God. Because God is in all things. And that's kind of the idea of this, that we are all a part of the divine essence that is out there in the world or in the universe. Now, the ones that I guess primarily come to mind that look at this would be some of the New Age beliefs, as well as Buddhism. Now, Buddha was not a god, never wanted to be worshipped as a god, but it was a belief that God was in all things and that everything was God. Okay? And so it was a worship of that, of life, of living things in the world and things like that. So, now, having said all that, and we've looked at a few different religions, and again, we don't have time to go into details, and this isn't really the place for that anyway. The more important question that I have is, what does the Bible teach? What does the Bible teach? Well, clearly, the Bible teaches monotheism, which is the worship of one God. Okay? Let's look at a couple of Bible verses. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 35, it says, it was shown, to you it was shown that you might know that the Lord himself is God. There is none other besides him. How many gods does that talk about? Just one. It was shown so that we would know that there is one God. The Lord himself is God, and there's none other besides him. In the New Testament letter to the Ephesians, Paul said there is one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. So, those were very good questions. I really enjoyed studying them and coming up with answers, if you want to call them that. But now I have a question for you. Here's my question. Do you believe in that God? The one God, the true and living God that sent his one and only Son to die on a cross to take the punishment that you deserved and that I deserve, our sins. Do you believe in that God? Because quite frankly, it doesn't matter what all these other religions believe. What we want to believe is truth. We want to believe in the one true God. And if you have questions about that in your mind or in that heart, we need to talk and we need to make sure that we have that clear and have that understanding. Because God created not only the world, he created you. He created me. And he had a plan for us before he even created us. Before the foundation of the world, he had a plan for us. And that was that he would give up his only begotten Son to cruelty, to ridicule, to punishment, to death, so that he could draw us to him. That's the kind of God. That is the God I serve. We can help you draw closer to him in any way. Let us know. We're going to sing a song right now to encourage you. So come if you need to come closer to God as we sing.